not the best known among African countries, Namibia can be described by many measures as a true success story. It is an investment-grade country. It has a very low debt to GDP ratio and a relatively high per capita GDP. I'm joined by Paul Wallace, our African editor, who has just come back from Namibia. Paul, so all this data points towards truly a success story, yet Namibia is highly reliant on exports and therefore commodity prices. What is the government doing to put the country on the right sustainable growth path?
You're right, it is pretty dependent, especially for exports. It is dependent on exports, and particularly on the mining sector. It's got big reserves of diamonds, of gold, and also of uranium. And so, in a lot of ways, it's not the most diverse economy. It's known as you mentioned, it's known as one of Africa's success stories. It's one of the more stable democracies in sub-Saharan Africa, and one of only 4 sub-Saharan countries to have an investment-grade rating. But the economy is very vulnerable to falls in commodity prices, and that's something that's hit Namibia in the last couple of years. It could even become more reliant. There's a huge uranium mine called Husab, which is being developed at the moment, and it should come on stream in 2015 and be fully operational by 2017.
Okay. So the bet continues to be on the mining story.
Yes.
But do you think that the government understands the concerns, or is able to do anything about this that potentially could be an issue in the long term?
Yes, and I spoke to government ministers out there, and it's clear they recognise that the economy needs to diversify. They need to boost the manufacturing sector and also services as well. It's quite difficult to do that. The Minister of Trade and Industry, Kali Schlettwein, said to me in Windhoek, the capital, that Namibia's advantage is its natural resources, the sheer extent of them in the country. So they want to develop tourism. They also want to turn Namibia into a logistics hub, use its good infrastructure, at least by regional standards, to become a sort of point of entry for goods coming into that region of the world, Southern Africa, and going into, say, landlocked nearby states like Zambia or Zimbabwe or Botswana and things like that. But
okay.
it won't happen overnight. It's
obviously, so there are all these plans that hopefully are going to lead to a more diversified economy in the future. Now, I believe that the per capita GDP for Namibia is $6,000, which is way above many others in the region. But how is the distribution of income in the country? It's
pretty unequal. Namibia was a colony of South Africa until 1990, so it had an apartheid system of government until then. And the legacy from that still exists today. It's got a small population of only 2.2 million, but it's still got a huge amount of poverty. The problem for Namibia is that mining, which is a huge part of its economy, does not create that much in the way of jobs for locals. Mines are heavily staffed by foreigners with skills and things like that. So there's a high rate of unemployment. No one knows the exact figure. Some people think it's as high as 40%, others say 25%. So it's an unequal society. And that's also part of the problem, because people say that wages in Namibia are too high by regional standards. They don't reflect the level of productivity and skills, and that there needs to be more flexibility in legislation and things. But the government then turns around and says, because of the legacy of apartheid and things, it won't introduce liberal hire and fire policies, because it wants jobs to be created, but it also wants sort of a stable working environment. So some tension in the labour market.
Yes. Now, obviously, writing for the banker, we need to look at the banking sector. Where does the banking sector fit into all of this?
The banking sector is one of the most sort of sophisticated industries in the country. It's a small sector. It's only got 4 banks in Namibia, or at least there's one that's just started up. But it's 4 banks. They only have about $8 billion of assets, so they're very small. But they form what the World Economic Forum says is the second safest banking system in the whole of Africa. So it's quite sophisticated, but there's a lot of pressure on the banks at the moment to do more to service the urban poor and also rural Namibians. That's something that the government's not very happy with, and it says the unbanked population is too high, and that it also says that banking services in the country are too expensive.
Okay, so a few issues there to look at when looking at Namibia. Thanks so much, Paul.